This is part 2 of our video. We last left off with Dolly Parton. Really nice hybrid tea rose. We mentioned it's older. Huge blooms. That's one of the things you probably notice about this rose versus anything else. And I'll hold up my hand by comparison, but much larger blooms than most roses. Just really nice. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna snap one of these off and compare it to, let's see, Pope John Paul II. Pretty nice, you know, Pope John Paul II is a big bloom as well, or decent sized bloom. I'd say average. And look how much bigger Dolly Parton is. Really nice. Another big bloom is Moonstone. This is a first year plant, so it's not quite as big as it usually is, but Moonstone's on the right, Dolly Parton on the left. So I hate to do that to the rose, but I wanted to show you bloom size comparison. And let's pick on one more that I would say is at least an average size bloom, maybe even a hair. I'd say this is a good comparison because it's a average size bloom, not a huge one, not a small one. On the right is Marilyn Monroe, on the left is Dolly Parton. So again, Dolly Parton, the thing that sets it apart is it's a huge bloom. The other thing that sets it apart is it is fragrant. I'm smelling it now. I wish you had one of these in your garden. If you don't have one, highly recommended. Its disease resistance, probably not quite as good as some of the others, but the growth habit is really good. Another fragrant rose that's kind of a mainstay in a lot of gardens. You can see why by just the sheer beauty of it, and that would be Double Delight. Let me zoom into that one. Bicolor bloom, has a spicy fragrance to it. If you're thinking about getting fragrant roses in your garden, Double Delight would be up there with Mr. Lincoln in terms of kind of gotta haves. I would put Mr. Lincoln, Double Delight, and Dolly Parton all together. When we're talking about growth, I'll compare the three. Mr. Lincoln is in the back, is the best growing one, and then Dolly Parton and Double Delight are certainly above average. The American Rose Society has ratings for how it does in the garden. I think Double Delight is in the 8s, which is an exceptionally good growing rose. So again, Double Delight with the color and just, I mean, this color is just outstanding, and then also smells good as well. Rounding out the fragrance garden, one that's really tall, the tallest rose, I think it's either this Mr. Lincoln or Yolande. This is a 6-7 foot high fence, so that gives you a comparison for how tall this rose bush is. This is an old garden rose from 1843, and this blooms primarily in the springtime. If I pruned it a little harder in late summer, they would have more blooms. But you can see the downside of this. Its fragrance is awesome. It's a pretty rose. I like hybrid tea form, but whew, it opens up quickly and then just falls apart. So we've had them as a cut flower inside, and the next thing you know, it has fallen apart. This is Alina. Talk about good growing roses. This is one of the best of all time. I think it's an 8.5 plus on the scale. Again, American Rose Society puts out these ratings from people from all across the country. It's a very nice open bloom. When I did rose shows a little bit more frequently, I never won queen with this, but I would often win second place or king with the bloom, and then often a cycle bloom or open bloom, other categories, because it's beautiful as an open bloom, and it does have exhibition form. Let's see, that's not the best example, but it's a good rose. The issue I have with it only where I am is it's a light yellow color, so it has thrip damage. That's what this brown marking that you have on the petals itself. So that's kind of a downer for here in my climate, because otherwise it's just a fantastic yellow rose in the garden. Great growth. Looks good as an open bloom. It looks good as you know, hybrid tea, like as a cut flower. Any of those would be fine. So that's it from the garden. Just kind of a wider view. This is part 2 of our video tour later into the month of October. We'll be wrapping things up here. You may wonder, our peak blooms can be anywhere from late April, or bloom season from late April through the month of October for sure. As we get into November, even early December, we can have some lingering blooms because we get pretty late frost here within 3 miles of the coast. Last thing I'll show you is the climbing rose. I haven't shown this in a while. This is pretty much up to the top of the trellis. This is Dublin Bay. I was hoping for a little more disease resistance. Granted, I haven't sprayed a ton. Late in the year, I kind of get lazy and I just don't spray. The roses will be okay, but look at that red. So if you're looking for a nice climbing rose, I've been happy with it. I wouldn't say it's the most vigorous climbing rose. I think it's listed as getting up to 6 feet, and that's about right for now. I think with a little bit more maturity on it, we'll get to the top of this trellis quite easily. But blooms in clusters, and this red is really, really nice. So it did turn out the way we wanted in terms of covering up this trellis. And then luckily this year we didn't have any hurricanes, knock on wood, so far to mess anything up. So that's certainly good. I'll give you a wider view on that. So comment below, is your garden rounding up here for the year? I know in upstate New York where I used to grow roses, the season's usually winding down, but we've had an exceptionally warm fall. So even you folks might be enjoying some blooms late into the year. Over the coming weeks, I'll do some maintenance, some weeding, maybe a spray or two for black spot, but it's kind of the end of the year, wrapping things up. And what I'm going to do now, once I'm done this recording, is I'm going to cut some of these blooms. Share these with your significant other, share these with your friends and neighbors. Nothing beats a homegrown rose. Don't worry too much about the little bit of black spot you have. Enjoy the blooms. They're a lot of work, and we may as well enjoy it. This fun hobby is all about sharing with others, either growing tips or the flowers themselves. You probably never realize until you see the face of someone after you've given them a bouquet of fresh roses, how it can really brighten up somebody's day. With that in mind, I'll leave you with a last look of Let Freedom Ring. Didn't show this red rose as much. We did Veterans Honor, Mr. Caleb, and Mr. Lincoln today, but Let Freedom Ring is also a very, very nice red rose that's widely available in commerce. Have a good one.